This is Up for Debate presents The Ballad of Rocky Balboa. Tonight, episode number 183, recorded June 25th, 2020, Chapter 6, Rocky Balboa. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Up for Debate presents, the podcast that, at least for the time being, is taking a deep dive into the Rocky franchise. I am Sean Jennings, joined by a man who I think could win any computer simulation. It's Matt Mariani. Hello, Matt.
Yeah, computer's no match for a good, strong magnet, right?
I could imagine you boxing an actual computer.
I told you, Sean, I already told you my strategy. I would put magnets underneath my boxing gloves.
Very smart.
I would win the day.
And then I could see it falling, your hands get stuck to it, and then it just keeps punching you because you can't move because your hands are stuck to it. Be like, damn it, the computer outsmarted Matt.
Yeah, it could definitely backfire, but I think that's the word. You probably stand the best chance fighting against a computer. Magnetic boxing gloves messes with their circuits.
I'm glad you've thought that problem through. Matt, a great episode ahead of us here. Obviously, we're going through the Rocky franchise, and boy, have we hit the fast forward button in time, because we've left Rocky V in the 90s behind, and we're splurging ahead to what was just a great year in pop culture, 2006. I'm now desperately Googling things about 2006 in popular culture.
So when I think popular culture in 2006, I think the Black Eyed Peas. They were a thing, definitely, right? 2006?
That's a good question, as I desperately Google.
I want to say at least Fergie was doing stuff.
Yeah,
Fergie,
they were definitely around.
Maybe Will.i.am.
That was kind of the wacky thing where they kind of... oh, this is very funny. No, not so big this year. My Humps was number 42 overall that year. So I think 2007-8 was when you got sort of the I Got a Feeling years. Would you like to guess the number one single of 2006? Just screams everything you need to know about 2006.
Semi-Charmed Kind of Life.
You're so far off. I don't know why we do this. We should stop doing this.
2006.
Let's see. Here we go. I'll give you some of the other top 10, including Sexy Back by Justin Timberlake, Crazy by Gnarls Barkley, Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield, Hips Don't Lie by Shakira, You're Beautiful by James Blunt, Promiscuous by Nelly Furtado. Again, just great quality music.
Yeah.
Fergie with London Bridge is number 22.
Oh, you know what? That
terrible song. Just a hot garbage song. No, the number one song of 2006 was Daniel Powter's Bad Day.
Oh, Bad Day, yes.
Garbage. Just trash. Just trash.
Bad day. Yeah, that was the American Idol song.
It was.
So this was the height of American Idol, yeah. That was the song they would play when the person would get voted off.
A great one-hit wonder, Daniel Powter.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I don't know, did they really have a bad day that day? Because the voting had been going on for weeks, right? Or was the voting only that night?
No, so
I don't remember how American Idol worked.
They would eliminate one person each week, and after that person got eliminated, then they would play the song to a montage of them having been on the show.
Yes, which that always confused me, because it's like them being successful, and then they're saying, well, I guess you had a bad day the day you got voted off. American Idol.
It should have been a little more inspirational, I think. A little more, feel good.
Also very, very subjective. I mean, who knows if they really had a bad day? They might have been having an awesome day until that moment.
That's right. And they should feel good. They made it that far in the competition. I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at.
That's right.
Later on in the show, Matt, we will play the top 10 films of 2006, so don't look, but that's also a very fun list.
All right. Hopefully I do better this time. This is the first Rocky that was premiered in our lifetime, so.
Yep, I mean, all these movies, unlike some of the other ones, so that'll be great. But, Matt, we're talking Rocky Balboa tonight. The champ is back, and he's old and sad. Matt, you've said previously in our series...
I wish they put that on the posters.
He's back, ... and sad.
Champ is back. He's old. He's sad. But he's still Rocky.
The heavyweight widower of the world. Now, Matt, you have previously hinted in this series that of your enjoyment of this movie. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, it's no secret that I like this movie for many reasons. I like the approach that um, of going into it and exploring a world where Rocky is old and mostly washed up and forgotten about. Honestly, like he is very much on the, I wouldn't even say the back burner. He is on the, like, he's in the fridge now. He's like the cold leftovers that they've stored in the fridge, and society is like says, oh yeah, we'll get to that eventually, but never does. He's just basically like the scrambled eggs, the leftover cold runny scrambled eggs of the sports world. He owns a bar. He owns like a little restaurant in Philly, which is cool. I think that's exactly what, if Rocky were a real person, that's 100% what he would do with his time, presuming he didn't die like was originally planned for Rocky 5. He would probably be a restaurant owner and maybe appear on the occasional commercial every now and then. Do you think that they would actually, because I know there was a cameo in the movie with Skip Bayless, and he says something like, "Oh, Rocky, he's never, he'll never beat this guy. You imagine him in the ring." He makes some kind of Skip Bayless joke at his expense. Oh, yeah. He calls him, what is he, he called him something about the Italian stallion being put out to pasture or something like that. Like, make some kind of Skip Bayless joke. Do you think that a real sports talk show would devote that much time to talking about a washed up boxer?
Well, but I think
is boxing that popular? I don't know.
So you got to remember, Rocky, assuming the film is linear in years, as to when the films were released, remember that Rocky beat Ivan Drago in, what year was that film? 85. 85 too, so that's 21 years later that this fight is happening, okay? If you do the math on that, that would be like who were the big boxers of the 90s?
Muhammad Ali.
I was oh boy. No, that would be like it would be like Evander Holyfield or Mike Tyson coming back and trying to win a fight today. I don't think we would laugh at that. Now, of course, Rocky was already kind of old in the 80s. That's the problem. But assuming he beat the greatest in the world then, I don't think it would be crazy for that to happen today. You wouldn't think he'd be like a sure shot favorite to win, but I do think this movie setup of what at one point they said, it's not an exhibition, it's an execution. And it's like, come on, like, don't pretend he would have zero chance. I mean, the dude is ripped. He's fucking ripped in the movie. Did you see his abs?
That's something that I never really, I didn't really buy into in the movie. They were acting like he was frail and feeble. And he wasn't. I mean, he's old. He's older, but he wasn't like decrepitly old. I mean, we're talking about what, like probably early 50s,
well, I was
late
gonna say,
40s.
How old? Take a guess. I looked
maybe
it up.
Maybe 60s.
How old do you think? Pick a number. How old do you think Sylvester Stallone was?
I'm gonna go 62.
He was 60.
60. Yeah. Okay. So he was. Yeah. Yeah. It totally doable. Totally doable. He gets the right diet, right training. Yeah.
But it was also crazy to me that, and this, I did note this. I said, this movie works too hard to get Rocky to win, because they could have just pitched, yeah, Rocky's kind of a sad sack, but he's in decent shape, and it's not like he forgot how to fight. He was two-time champion, but instead, at one point, Dixon, very different. Dixon in one of the early rounds, like, he's like, he hurt his hands. Like, my hands broke. It's like, don't give him excuses as to why Rocky can beat him. Like, he doesn't need a broken hand. Like, they were coming up with all kinds of excuses of why it would be even plausible for Rocky to beat him, and I'm like, I didn't think that was necessary.
Yeah. That was, I agree. That was it was unnecessary that they they set up these like advantages for Rocky. I mean, Rocky's Rocky. Um, Rocky's very introspective in this movie, Sean. It's something that I I almost said off the court, different analogy,
You're a
different
real
sport,
boxing
different game.
expert.
He's off the out of the ring. Rocky is a very introspective, older Rocky. He says lines like, sometimes one of the he's like being really reflective, and I forget if he's talking to Paulie. I think he's talking to Paulie, and he says, "I sometimes, man, I don't know. It's like replacing old pain with new pain. It's just the same pain. I don't know if it's really worth it," or something like that. Just paraphrasing. Um, he even says, "What does it mean to really to fight?" Is another line from this movie that Rocky says to himself, or maybe to Paulie, talking about what I think that I thought that was kind of a cool angle. Like he's not just fighting anymore. Now he's really thinking about what does it mean to fight? Why do we do this? Why did I spend my entire career doing this? Why did I put my body through this? And I think there's a good answer in the end. Um, you know, by the end of the film, we really get the impact that it has on Rocky's life, but also the impact it has on his son's life and the people around him, the people he's affiliated with. Uh, I think it changes their, kind of inspires them. It's almost like he becomes his own work of art, which I guess there's an allusion to him with the Philadelphia Museum of Art and the cufflinks going in there. You know how art inspires people, but also Rocky beating the crap out of people and getting the crap beaten out of inspires people as well.
I thought in this movie, Rocky had several very good monologues. I particularly thought the speech he gave to his son in the alleyway outside the restaurant, where, I have the quote here, just part of it, but let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life, but it ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Which I thought was an excellent speech. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest about this movie and my overall thoughts. I've said about basically every Rocky movie we've watched that the boxing was the best part of the movie and you could have killed everything else. I felt the exact opposite for this movie. I wish, truly, there was no boxing scene at the end of this movie. I did not
Really?
want... Now, I liked how they did it in certain aspects, and we can get into the details of it, but this was finally the Rocky character I've been waiting to see now for 6 movies. An actual human being character with true thoughts and feelings. I think part of it, and because I have no life, before we did this, I watched they did a behind-the-scenes featurette for the 2006 film with Stallone, and he talks a little bit about making the movie and things like that. And I just think by 2006, Stallone is a much more complete actor, complete writer, complete director. Rocky doesn't mumble as much in this movie. He's a little more clear. I understand the motivations, and there's like actual acting going on, which is kind of crazy. And this is like, I love this Rocky. I want to see this Rocky. One of the things was that in the movie, Adrian originally wasn't going to be dead, and they decided to kill her. And I'm like, what an awesome angle! Like, this is a real person. Finally, he's not just a caricature of a sports guy. He's a real person, and I absolutely loved that about this movie. That was by far the best part. I could have cared less about the fight at the end of the movie.
I think you hit the nail on the head for me too. The scene with where he talks to his son, definitely my favorite scene in the movie. It's a very motivational, probably the most motivational. I would say the most motivational thing in the entire series. It's very very mature and reflective of an aged Rocky. It parallels his experience in the fighting world with his son's experience in the business world. Like really, I guess the son is the fight that originally begins in a very realistic way with the son being upset that he's basically living in Rocky's shadow. That
Well,
Rocky's, which was a little bit of a conflict for me on the other hand, because they're trying to play up the fact that Rocky is not, he's kind of not fallen from grace, but he's just been mainly forgotten about by the mainstream. But
well,
how can you also be living in your father's shadow? I
I,
don't know.
I think they sort of split that difference because I think the movie claims that nationally people don't care about Rocky, but he's still popular in Philadelphia. And I think that's kind of how. But like one scene I really liked in the movie, again, subtle things that this movie actually thought about is there is that great scene where it's in the lobby of the office building where his son works, and Rocky goes to meet his son, and Rocky behind a piece of glass watches as the boss yells at his son, and then goes up and meets the boss. And I think, in an older Rocky movie, we would have been hit over the head with it. But I think in this one, it is subtle enough where you're like, yeah, this kid is kind of a loser in some respects, but at the same time, you do understand a situation and how Rocky has to deal with that because he's not used to the business world. He's not used to people yelling at him. Rocky's a boxer. He's a star. And I think, he's a nice guy. And I think that in learning his relationship with his son, I thought was little touches like that were very good. And then as Rocky's leaving, he stopped by a dude for an autograph or for a picture, and you see his son kind of roll his eyes, and you're like, okay, this is actually good world building. Shocker for a Rocky movie.
Yeah, I don't think there's really much of a comparison with the other Rocky movies with fleshing out the conflicts out of the ring. I mean, Rocky Five totally had a very good opportunity to do that with Rocky's brain damage, and we talked about it in that episode. And his PTSD after the fight with Drago, and they really had an opportunity to explore that, and that fell flat on its face. But in this case, they picked this thread with his relationship with his son, and I think they finally follow it all the way through, to the point where they both have a good mutual understanding of each other.
But I do think a sort of over-the-top boxing movie also works. I mean, we both, have enjoyed Rocky IV, for example, which is the most over-the-top nonsense sports movie craziness. And that totally works. And this movie did a great job of doing the 180. And like, no, we're going to go serious with it. We're going to deal with real stuff. Rocky is a nice guy who just wants to help people. But at the same time, he struggles to confront conflict and where his role is in the world. I mean, I think, damn, and it's embarrassing that I'm struggling with his name because we've done enough of these I should know. Burt Young as Paulie, I think, is really great in this movie. I think this is his best turn acting. A, because his character isn't a caricature of a character. It's an actual person. And B, he has something to do. We see him in his older age. We see him get that scene where I don't even think there's any dialogue. It's shot from afar where they sort of hand him the paper and you're like, oh my God, he's getting laid off. Where a couple scenes ago, he said, this is all I have. And then he goes to the bar and you think he's going to flip out and start smashing stuff. And he does a little bit, but then he just sort of goes out to the alleyway. That was like really genuinely emotional for a character who has been defined throughout 5 movies as being a complete and utter moron.
Yeah, I even wrote, in my notes, I said, Paulie has depth, but is still a problem. I wrote that in special regards. I don't know if you caught the line where he went into, I think it might have been right after he was laid off. The first thing he says to the hostess when asked, does he have a reservation? He says, and I quote, reservation, do I look like a frickin' Indian?
But also,
so
he's the comic relief character. He has, and he had a few good zingers in the movie.
Yeah, I agree that what I like about his character is that it's if you could draw a diagram of this movie, it's like Rocky is in the center, and everybody around him, his circle. So his Rocky's son, Paulie, Maria, who's a callback from the earlier films. They're all like in a circle around Rocky, feeding not their problems, but their conflict. They're feeding their conflicts. The world has kind of spit at them, all of them collectively, and they're basically putting. It's like the old, the old folklore legend of the golem, like Jewish folklore.
Of course,
where
I'm an
like the
expert
town
on
has like
Jewish.
a golem.
I'm an
Of
expert on
course,
Jewish folklore. Yes, of
I
course.
knew I can count
I
on
already
you,
know
Sean
this, but
Jennings,
tell
to
it to the
understand.
people at home who don't know it.
So to make the a long story short here, in ancient Jewish folklore, there's a golem, and the golem is like was a mystical creation from a rabbi. It's like a giant stone figure that would protect the people of the community. And what they figured out you could do is if you wrote in Hebrew your problems and you gave it to the golem, like the golem would like find some way to solve the problem. Usually it was like dealing with assholes who lived outside of the village that would be like bothering the people inside the village. Very, very good folklore for um, Jewish people who oftentimes lived in other lands and things like that. Rocky was kind of like the golem in this movie. Yeah, like the people around him, not that they were bringing their problems to him, but they put a lot of trust and a lot of faith in him, and he was more like their champion. Like he would win. Maybe he was, I guess, more like a Greek hero because he would win when he won the fight in the or when the fight happened in the end. When we'll get into that in a little bit later. Um, a lot of people, I guess, were using him as a way to channel their own failures and their own frustrations with the world. And to me, that was very mid 2000s. It was a very mid 2000s thing to do because in a post 9/11 world, like reeling from the uncertainties, sports was a true escape for a lot of people. And if you and a lot of people, funneled their frustrations and their fears into their sports teams, and I think they've been doing that since time immemorial. But just for some reason, the mid 2000s just seems like a perfect time for like we're just gonna forget everything, all the problems of the world. We're gonna watch this fight, and we're gonna cheer Rocky on because he's our champion. He's our golem. And I think that it really comes to a head in the fight at the end of the movie, just how much is at stake for the little Philadelphia community that Rocky has surrounded himself with.
Well, and that's the difference between this and a Rocky 4, which I think are, for me anyway, sort of the two contrasts of this franchise so far. When I think about how they came up with the idea for Rocky 4, I just imagine Stallone and a bunch of guys in a room with cocaine being like, oh my God, what if he fought the commies? Like just something buck wild insane, where they're like, how big can we make this? And when I think about this movie, I really felt like, again, Sylvester Stallone had 15 years between Rocky 5 and this movie to sit and think about these characters. He's admitted he was very disappointed with how it ended at Rocky 5. And also if you look at his filmography and the films he starred in between Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa was some of both his biggest movies and some of his biggest failures. And so I think he was a much smarter guy this time around. And he talked to himself and said, hey, look, if he were a real boxer, what would happen? A kid who grew up on the streets, a kind of dumb guy, let's be honest, who has no business being a rich, fancy guy, who has no business being world famous. He just wants to go back to the only place he's ever called home, open up a restaurant because it's not that hard to do with that much money, and go table to table and tell stories, the same story over and over to people who've heard it a million times, and do what he can to help his community and just live the best life he can. And it's a very real, relatable story. Have a wife who's died and a son he's having trouble relating to, and a changing world he can't relate to. And I just think this was really the first Rocky movie that really spoke to that realism. That makes sense, and I give Stallone a lot of credit because he played it very realistically, and I think it was a great acting performance from him in this. I really felt it without it being cheesy.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to the maturity of Stallone at this point as an actor. He mentioned in an interview that he only made Rocky 5 for money, kind of like it was just a cash grab. I really wouldn't be surprised if that were the case for Rocky 4 as well. But looking at this movie, it seemed like much more of a passion project. I mean, Stallone had already made his money. He was mostly, I don't know if he wasn't out of the industry by any means. We still had the Expendables, and we had...
Well, but that was later.
But he hadn't really... When was the last movie he had made up until this point?
Well, there were... movies that he sort of, the last movie he had really starred in as the lead was a direct-to-video comedy film in 2002. Before that was a psychological thriller in '02, Detox, Driven in '01. Really, I mean, the last movie you would have heard of him being in was probably Daylight or Copland, but that was the mid-'90s. I mean, he really hadn't been in anything you could point to and say successful since back in the '90s.
Really, probably since Rocky V.
No, no. Because after Rocky
I
V
guess he
was,
had.
no,
He had
after
a
Rocky
couple
V was
after.
Cliffhanger, Demolition Man, Judge Dredd. I mean, he had a lot in the early '90s because Rocky V was '90. So the first sort of 5 years of the '90s was his years. But then after that, he just sort of, kaboom. It picked a lot of bad roles. And by the way,
this
hasn't been in that many great movies since. When you look at his, and they're all, like you said, the Expendables, I can't believe 2 additional Rambo movies he's done since Rocky Balboa. And then just sort of the generic Escape Plan, Grudge Match, which basically is a Rocky movie. Of course, Creed and Creed 2, the Escape Plan sequel, etc.
Yeah. I'm looking at my notes now, and I just want to go really quickly back to the speech with his son, where he gives the.
Yeah.
We agree that it's a great speech, very motivational. But the son quits his job. That kind of surprised me. That kind of took me off guard. I was ready for him to go back to his job, not like tell off his boss or anything like that, but go back to his job, work really hard, like double, basically like work his ass off, and like get promoted or something, and like find some way to overcome the problem. Instead, it seems almost like he ran from the problem because he quits. I don't know if that was. I mean, I know that was like the movie wanted him to express a change, and it's a very small nitpick, but I probably would have had him been like, "Guess what, Dad? I got that promotion that I've been having my eye on since like since I started," or something like that. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's more of a script thing. I think it was just an easy way to cut a loose end without having to have extra scenes or more explanation. Because it's just say, I quit. Be like, that's an easy thing. That's believable, at least, whether it's the right thing or not. I thought the son character, and no slam to Milo Ventimiglia, who is, I think, an excellent actor overall. I just think the son character was a little underdeveloped. I think it could have been a little more interesting than what he actually was in the movie. It wasn't bad, but it was just like making him sort of the corporate punching bag character. I thought it wasn't. I never really bought it as much as some of the other characters' motivations.
So you're saying a character in a Rocky movie other than Rocky was underdeveloped?
Well, but that's a shame because John. But I think this movie. Let me say this, and I do have thoughts on other characters. This movie really picked who they wanted to develop. Because like I said, Rocky, great development. Paulie, great development. Mason the Line Dixon, totally underwritten character. Other than I don't get, he's just generic boxer. Like, I'm not, so now, did he need to be that developed? I don't know. Was that necessary to the plot? I don't know.
I kind of disagree. I think Mason the Line Dixon was developed just the way that they wanted him to be developed. I mean, he was a young, scrappy athlete. He was very, very mouthy athlete. And I think that's what the character they were going for. They were going for kind of like a, trying to think of a good, I mean, really like I don't want to say a young Muhammad Ali because he didn't really seem like he had a lot of value. He was too mild. He was very cocky. He was cocky.
Too mild. What I'm saying is you have to remember the 90s moving on, you have the Mike Tysons and these over-the-top characters in boxing. And this guy, I'm like, they try, like they paint him with like the flashy cars and the entourage and all this stuff, which was common at the time. And like, okay, I kind of get that's what boxing was at that time. The weigh-in and all that, the press conference. But I'm like, this dude's too boring. Like, he's too mild. Like, if you're going to have, like, Rocky facing the modern boxer, make him flashier. You know, make him more in your face. Even at the press conference, he was like half asleep. I'm like, make this guy like get in Rocky's face, like have him
So
actually.
you wanted him to be like Clubber Lang.
I did, because at least that's compelling. Even Drago had like something interesting about him where you're like, that dude's crazy. Like that dude's gonna wreck Rocky. This guy, I'm like, yeah, of course Rocky could kick his ass. Like I wasn't even convinced he was a good. And by the way, again, they spent the whole movie saying, yeah, he's the champion, but he's never really fought anybody good. Like I could kick his ass. It's like, what a weird way to.
Yeah, those agents
that.
were pretty bad. They very shady agents.
Yeah, like we can't find anybody to beat, like to fight him because he's too easy. Like it was such a weird way they set him up.
Yeah.
But by the way,
it's almost like they needed, like, oh, it would have been awesome if they could have somehow done like a time warp where they could have gotten Michael B. Jordan in the Creed films to fight. I don't know, Rocky. That would have been interesting.
Part of it is Mason the Line Dixon, played by Antonio Tarver in the movie, who is a boxer. He is not an actor. He is a real boxer. He's held multiple world championships, and I think considering he's not an actor, I thought he did a really good job in the movie. You know, he certainly held his own. I think it was more of a writing problem. But I was also going to say one other thing I did want to talk about was this movie's. So anytime, Matt, we live in the era of the reboot of the franchise, or the long-awaited sequel of a franchise. I would say Sylvester Stallone corners that between Rambo and Rocky. And one thing all of these franchises have to do are callbacks. Okay? You can never just have a new movie. You always have to do some kind of reference to the original. It was absolutely buck wild to me. Absolutely just insane that Marie was the girl from the first movie. I wrote in here, monumentally stupid was what I wrote. And creepy. I wrote monumentally stupid and creepy. And it's like, you think Stallone's in a room like, guys, you know what would be a great idea? If I hooked up with the little girl from the first movie. Like, dude.
I don't think they hook up. Do they hook up?
No, they don't. Not in an aggressive way.
Yeah, they don't hook up.
But you know, she's the love interest.
I don't think so. I don't think she is. Did you interpret it that way? I interpreted it more of like he's looking out for her, like a little sister kind of way. I maybe a little bit more than that. Maybe a little bit more than.
Let me put it this way. I think the movie wants you to think your position. That's what I think. I think the movie wants you to think it's more of like a father-daughter maybe kind of role, or a little bit something like that. But also they like go on dates and spend a lot of like time together close to, like they never make out at any point, but
they just need a reason to have her be in the movie.
Yeah, and
I think she visits his restaurant sometimes, and then she gets a job there.
Yeah, she gets a job there. I mean, the idea of Rocky having a female love interest and a female love interest with a son who Rocky can interact with, great idea. Totally unnecessary to make it the girl from, like, why?
I think that would be, having the love interest is fine, but I think it would be divisive, because I think a lot of people would be like, well, what about Adrian? Oh, there's no Adrian. He can't move on from Adrian. I think it'd be divisive. I would agree with it. I think that it would just show it's death is a part of life. And that he did grieve, because he did sufficiently go to her like grave and stuff.
Well,
but
by the way, we don't have to show them having sex. Like, I'm not saying it's like he's like gonna marry her. I'm just saying you could have brought in a female sort of, because really, I'm going to be honest, the only role Marie plays in this movie is telling Rocky he should go fight. Like, she doesn't actually add a lot to the movement of the plot.
Well, she's like a more of a, I think an analog to Paulie, right? Because Paulie loses his job, is down on his luck. Maria has a job, I think, as a stripper or
Absolutely
something.
Not. Absolutely
no?
Not.
Did I get that wrong?
You got that.
He says something about dancing. About her dancing, like, do you really, really like doing that? Is that really what you want to do? Come work at my bar. That's how she hires her to work at the restaurant. I think maybe not. Maybe she works somewhere else.
I don't remember.
She works somewhere very sleazy. She works at a place of ill repute.
Yeah, maybe she's like a bartender or something.
They don't delve as much into it, but she has a really shitty job.
Yes.
And is in a bad way, and Rocky takes her under his wing. So it's again looking at how Rocky is like the center of this community. Really, but you know what, Sean? I like your idea now about how he didn't have to fight at the end of the movie. He should have run for office. This should have been like Rocky runs for mayor of Philly, and like his new fight could have been like on the campaign trail or something. His son could have quit his bad corporate job and worked as his campaign
Okay.
manager. Paulie would be in there too as like
Was
an
like his chief
advisor
of staff,
or
like
something. I don't know.
I mean, I think would that be a more fun movie? 100%. Would I watch it? You bet. Would it be a good ending for this movie? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
He wins the election in a landslide, or I
And then
guess
it's just like a
the Rocky
comedy.
equivalent. What would the Rocky equivalent of an election be? I guess like his Rocky usually goes the distance, but sometimes doesn't win. What is going the distance in an election? Like
Well, no, I think it would just be
in
the
in
whole.
a national election, like winning the popular vote but losing the electoral college.
No, I just think it
What
would
would
be
it be?
like the whole movie. Everyone tells Rocky he can't run for office and he can't win, and then he tells him he can't, and then finally, like he makes it all the way to like election night, and he loses by like one vote. But he's like,
Okay.
it doesn't matter. We still made a difference.
We made it
What was the
different.
speech from the end of 4 where he's like, if I can change, you
Then
can
you-
change.
you
And
can
it's like,
change.
he just does the same speech.
Drago comes back as
Oh my
like
god, that's
a
who's running against him. Yes.
yeah. Drago somehow gets U.S. citizenship.
Like, why are you running for councilman in Philadelphia? Like, this is weird.
Oh, yeah. That is 100%. I would see that movie. I would watch the hell out of that movie.
Now, I will say, for this movie specifically, what I think it should have been is just a dramatic look at what life is like as a retired sports figure and fighter, as a widower, as a single father, as a leader in a community. I think that's enough of a story without having a giant boxing fight at the end. And if we had gotten to the end of the movie where Rocky just comes to grips and says, I don't need to fight. I fought and I have everything in my life. I fight for my community. I fight for my family. I don't need to get into a ring. I think that would have been just as good of an ending.
I think.
But then it wouldn't be a Rocky movie. I mean, you don't set up the template for no reason.
Well, that's just it. I think if we're talking about a way to split the fan base, I think that's another divisive move. I think people go to Rocky expecting a Rocky fight.
But it just
I like it. I definitely am for it. I think it's the better. It's definitely the better story. But because then it's showing like I don't need to fight to solve my problems, and I can still kick life's ass without getting in a boxing ring. But it's not. I think especially a lot of the fans of Rocky from the 70s and 80s would feel betrayed if that were the case.
well, but then I just circle back to the hoops this movie has to jump through to make a fight between the current heavyweight champion and the old decrepit Rocky Balboa plausible is so
yeah, but
annoying.
I think a lot of people it's a willing suspension of disbelief because it's a Rocky movie. It's
But
like,
I-
yeah,
but
of
the
course,
thing
it's
is,
a Rocky movie.
Mine was not suspended. It was in full effect. I had a full amount of disbelief because it was ludicrous that, first of all, the then versus now computer animation fight, I wrote in my notes here, can a computer simulation even do that? Like, where you could just put in, I mean, I guess you can because you can do it with, like, Madden and stuff where you just simulate a game. But can you do it with, like, two individuals and, like, predict all the rounds of the fight? Like, that just, and would anyone
You
care?
can now. I think you absolutely can in 2020. In 2006, probably not with a tremendous amount of accuracy. In my mind, what they did was they just played one of those boxing video games like the Ring or whatever it's called
Well,
at Fight Night. And then they just like put it on simulation where they simulated Rocky fighting this guy and then they talked about kind of like how right before the Super Bowl, right, they have like the Madden simulations where they have the two
well,
Super Bowl contenders going at it.
I wouldn't have had a problem if they said the computer says Rocky would have won 71% of the time. Like, okay, I get how you might compute that, but like to run on ESPN this intense simulation, and then by the way, everyone in the bar is like watching it, like, yeah, go Rocky, and I'm like, it's a computer. Why are you cheering? To me, that was just really silly. And then the fact that kicks this whole thing off, where some like boxing exec is like, huh, interesting. It's like it was just very silly. It was very silly.
Yeah. I agree. I don't even know. I think that was just to show you that it was a new era, or as Rocky puts it, he says, nothing's changed all that much except maybe the clothes, which is a cool. That's one of my favorite lines in the movie. But I just wanted to throw that line in there because it should the computer program is just showing you that we're in the 2000s now. I think that's really the only way they could do it, other than because he's in the same neighborhood. Everything else is pretty much the same except he's older. Just to show you that this is a new era. Look at these computer simulations that show how hard a boxer can hit. If anything, I wish they kind of leaned into that more, because then it shows like Rocky as like really this old school champion of like I don't care what the computer says, I can still win a fight even though I'm 60. I wish they had leaned into the analytics of boxing a little bit more, and there was even more doubt of like, look, all the we ran like 20 simulations, Rocky, and you lost them all, and you're old, and not that the computer simulations, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. They showed that this would be a good match, right? They
Yeah,
didn't show that Rocky
it
would get
went
his
the
ass kicked.
distance, more or less. Yeah.
Yes. They should have had another program that basically looked at Rocky, like the computer looks at Rocky and is like, "You're gonna get your ass
Well,
kicked,
but
old man,"
the problem with
and
that,
that gives him more motivation
no,
to train.
no, because the problem with that is then there's what's the motivation to hold the fight? Because it's like, well, if he's going to get destroyed in the first round, we're not going to set up the Mandalay Bay with the big fight and all this stuff. Like, you have to have some sort of element of like, I guess he has enough of a chance to set up an exhibition. Which is why it doesn't make sense he's fighting the current heavyweight champion. If it had been he's fighting another retired boxer, or it's like the Thunder Lips exhibition fight, or something like that, where it's like, okay, I could plausibly see him coming out of, it's like it's Clubber Lang is back, bring back Mr. T. It's like like for some reason they have a rematch. It's like I don't know, but it's like just the plausibility of like, it's just bananas to me. But I guess for the amount of money he'd make.
There wouldn't be the conflict of young versus old. There wouldn't be the like, does he still have it in him? If he's fighting another old man, then you're kind of worried for both of them, and you're like,
But
oh, we're gonna
that's
watch two old men fight. Where's the tension?
yeah,
There's
but
the tension here was like, will Rocky die? Will this young guy actually kill Rocky in this fight? Because will his heart give out? He's an old man. Like he's getting older now. Like there's some tension. But if it's two old men, you're like, oh my God, I hope somebody stops the fight before both of these old men kill each other.
Well, I know you say no one wants to watch a movie about two old men fighting, but you have to remember, Sylvester Stallone did make Grudge Match, in which he, an old man, fights Robert De Niro, another old man, in a fight specifically where they're both old men, and it was a huge failure, so you're probably right.
Yeah. I was going to say, did anybody watch that? Like,
Nope, absolutely not. Matt, let's talk about the fight at the end, because
yes.
while I didn't think it was necessary plot-wise, this was shot in a way and completed in a way that was very different from the other movies. And I don't know if you caught this. I just noticed this because I'm a total nerd about how movies are made. But one interesting choice they made was when they actually get to the fight, it's presented like it would be on television. The HBO graphics come in, the on-screen graphics. It's shot like it was actually on television, and it was actually shot with HD cameras, not film cameras. They shot it with television cameras. And so even like the frame rate and the look and style of it changed once the fight started. I thought that was so brilliant because the one thing about all the other Rocky fights is they look like they were from a movie. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's the highly choreographed. This fight, for what it's worth, looked very real. Part of that, by the way, and this was part of the behind the scenes, is that they actually were throwing punches at each other. They were literally, in all the other Rocky movies, they never actually punched each other. Or at least not very hard. This one, they purposefully, Stallone said, we have to actually hit each other. We're not going to put a single fake punch in. Every single punch you see on screen was actual strong glove-to-face or glove-to-torso contact. And I think the fight is one of the best shot for me of the entire franchise because of just it's how different it was and how real it felt.
Yeah. Going forward also with the I guess the choreography of the fight too is the in addition there's the cinematography of the fight. I thought that was a really cool idea to fade the colors. except for the blood, and just like leave the blood, like emphasize that blood is red, because you get it also earlier in the movie. You remember the scene where Paulie gets fired, and everything is like drab. It's color sapped. Everything is like color drained from the point he gets the letter to when he enters the bar. And then when he enters the bar and he sees Rocky, like the color comes back. Again, kind of echoing how, symbolically Rocky is like the hope. Rocky is hope in this movie, like is the embodiment of hope. I thought that was cool. I wish that they had done something with it, though. I wish that they had like maybe had the color in that. It would have been an inversion of that scene. Hear me out here. Like the color is faded except for the blood, and then he looks around at the crowd who's cheering like Rocky, Rocky, and the color all of a sudden comes back as he gets like his will to fight comes back, basically.
Yeah, I mean that was.
I don't know.
What's interesting about the fight is they used almost 3 different filmmaking techniques. For the first couple rounds, they just shot it like a regular TV show, no editing, just short of a real fight. Up close, which, by the way, you don't see in the other Rocky movies. I mean, the cameras are right there like they would be in a real fight. The guy's ringside with the cameras. Then they go to, like you said, the sort of heavy color saturation, play with the different things. And then after that, they actually do like an aggressive flashback montage where they use clips from the other movies. And it's like it's intercut, really like aggressively cut between different things. I wish they had just picked one. I didn't like that they used all
that part
three
was a little messy.
It felt very confusing. Because I'm like, you're right, the color saturation thing was cool, but make that the gimmick. You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
that exactly. Yes,
don't bounce
that could have
between
been the only thing in the fight.
Because all of a sudden you shoot the first couple rounds, it's like, this is so realistic. This is really happening. And then out of nowhere, it's like everything's black and white but the blood. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, I got so confused.
Maybe lean into one of those techniques, but not all of them. Doesn't need all of them. Or you know what else would have been cool if you wanted to do the callback angle. Maybe like when he goes and he hits Mason Dixon, and as he hits him, this is my like anime brain going into like thinking of Dragon Ball Z, what they would have done in this. He hits Mason Dixon, and then all of a sudden a super cut of him hitting Clubber Lang, him hitting Apollo Creed, him hitting Ivan Drago. Just one right after another, just like boom, boom, boom. That would have been cool. Like, and them all reacting in the exact same way. I'm sure you could have found a way that they all get hit so that it lines up in succession. That kind of would have been neat. But I agree. Like the cuts, the way that they did them, they were kind of jarring. It was jarring to kind of go from scene to movie to movie. I guess they felt like because it's Rocky, that's what you do in a Rocky movie is callbacks to other Rocky movies. Like, but how unfair was it? Talking about, I said the Rocky villains always get the short end of the stick. They never get any respect, even since Rocky 1. When they walk into the arena, from the very beginning, the whole crowd is on Rocky's side.
And then what's great is Mason Dixon seems surprised. He's like, what? Why aren't they cheering for me?
I was surprised. This guy's a heavyweight champion. He doesn't even have like 5 people rooting for him.
Well, or even like booing him. Like they just seem to not care about. That's what's weird is like if he's a villain, make him a villain. People boo him. Yes. He doesn't give it. He flips him off. He doesn't give a crap. Like that's great. I'm for that. But honestly, just nobody seemed to like him, which was very odd to me.
The villain in this movie was society. I feel like that was like society.
The villain in this movie was death.
I was gonna say the inevitability of our own demise was the villain of Rocky Balboa.
One of the best of the franchise, I would argue.
Yeah,
the one villain Rocky couldn't beat.
Yeah, because he dies in the end. No, he doesn't.
Stallone would never let that happen.
But it's true. Yeah, the whole crowd cheering for Rocky when he first walks in. Which, by the way, I forgot the song that Mason Dixon walks into, but it's very. I like the song choice here. Being a baseball fan, I acknowledge what they were trying to do. The song that Rocky walks in enters the arena to is High Hopes by Frank Sinatra,
Yeah.
which
And they make a
is
joke about it.
Yes, yeah, they do, because it's an older song. I think Mason Dixon like laughs at it or something, like this old ass music or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but the song High Hopes was popularized by the Philadelphia Phillies. That became like almost their mantra, their theme song, after the 1993 NLCS, when the Phillies won and then would go on to win the World Series. High Hopes became their theme song when the reporter Harry Kalis drunkenly sang it in their locker room after a game. It was actually their play-by-play announcer. He like kind of snuck into their locker room and was very clearly drunk, I think, inebriated, and excited for them having won. Sings the song with all the whole team, and then it was reprised in 2008, which was just 2 years after this movie was made, when the Phillies again won the World Series. So it was like their de facto theme. So it was a Philly song if ever there was one. So I thought that was a good choice, very appropriate for the venue. It almost like it's just if you're ever gonna pick an athletic Phillies song there. I guess what I'm saying is I'm just grateful they didn't pump in "Gonna Fly Now," because that would have just killed the entire moment for me. I think from that point on I would have just been like, this is lame.
But as far as like tongue-in-cheek callbacks go, I might give them that one, because that's so like a lot of the, like, another example in this movie that we didn't talk about, and we'll breeze right past because there's more interesting things. But the fact that and I don't think without the internet I would have noticed this, but Spider Rico having a role in this movie, as the down on the luck fighter who just starts working in the kitchen for some reason, who is the opponent from the first scene in the first movie, is, again, so unnecessary and nobody would have noticed if not for the internet. That, a tongue-in-cheek thing like that, I think I would have actually cackled at a little bit.
Yeah, that was a very highly looked over callback for sure. Only the deepest of deep cuts would have appreciated that.
Now, I will say, when you talk about the entrance and the fight, just sort of a fun fact, but they actually, the fight itself, they didn't, but the scenes of him entering the crowd, entering the arena, entering the ring, they actually shot prior to an actual boxing event at the Mandalay Bay. When the pyrotechnics go off, it is a full stadium before an actual fight. And they actually got the entire real boxing crowd to chant "Rocky, Rocky," and had Sylvester Stallone and the camera crew there, and actually walked him in and did the "Let's get ready to rumble" and all that prior to an actual boxing match. So again, that very realistic shot with the same HD cameras they shot the fight in. So HD being new, then that's the only reason I bring that up. Now, Matt, the ending, Rocky goes the distance, believe it or not, and loses in a split decision. Now, Matt, did you know that they shot an alternate ending in which he wins the fight?
Yes, I did. And I'm really glad that they did not use it.
Did you watch it? It's on YouTube.
I confess that I did not. I did not even want to watch it.
So bad. And part of it is because it was shot poorly. It shot very awkwardly, and I think it was because they shot it in front of that real boxing crowd, and they had to kind of rush through it. But it's very awkward because they're both sort of standing in the ring, and then it's a lot of shots of Mason Dixon being like, "How did I lose? How did I lose? What? Oh, no, man, I'm still the..." And then Rocky like also seems into it's awful. I'm so thankful they didn't use it. It was very badly shot.
Well, one of my favorite things about this ending, and I would probably go to bat for it being one of the best endings of the series, is that, well, number one, he loses, which it doesn't matter. That's the whole point, is that even by losing, he still wins because he's Rocky, and it's just like a mirror to Rocky 1. He goes the distance but doesn't win the match. Even more so now, it doesn't matter because the city's behind him, cheering for him. And I think the best thing that they did was, not only does he not lose the match, but notice how he leaves the arena before the decision is even announced.
Yep.
I thought that was so cool because it doesn't matter. In this case, it's Rocky versus the elements. People said he couldn't do it. People said he was going to die. They said he was going to get knocked out, and he didn't. He went the distance, so therefore he won. And he knows that, and that's why the movie just ends with him leaving the arena even before the decision is even read. And the decision is read, and it's totally background because Rocky's happy, his son is happy, Maria's happy. All of Philadelphia is happy that he went the distance and he did it, and that they got more Rocky.
And that's, I think, sort of the visual difference is that, we see Mason Dixon in the ring with all his belts and his crew and all of that and the announcers and the camera. And we see Rocky heading to the exit with his friends, with his family. And it does really tell two stories of different priorities. And that Rocky proved what he came to prove. He left it all in the ring. And he truly is moving on. With his life. One element I thought the movie didn't quite land, which was interesting to me, is towards the end, they kind of imply the idea that, well, now that Mason Dixon has fought a real fighter and won, he'll be taken more seriously, to which I say, he got his ass kicked by an old man. So no, I don't think who cares if he won in a split decision? He should have knocked Rocky out. I don't care if he's the two-time champ. They spent calling an execution, and he took him the distance. This is incredibly embarrassing for Mason Dixon.
They should have had Skip Bayless come on afterwards saying that exactly what you said. This is embarrassing.
Like a Stephen A. Smith type coming on and just ripping him a new one.
How do you... Yeah, I have a terrible Stephen A. Smith impression. But
please don't.
That would have been great. That would have been really funny way to end it. But yeah, by him leaving, he's saying he's leaving it behind, but with a smile on his face. He came there, he did what he had to do. And he look at the message he sent to his son. Look at the monologue with his, or the when he talks, has that big speech with his son. He says to him that life will keep you on your knees. The important thing is to get back up and keep on fighting. He didn't say the important thing is to kick life's ass and win in 18 rounds. He didn't say the important thing is to get a decision where you benefit, where you're the champion. He said that it's to get up and keep on fighting, and that's exactly what he does in the fight, kind of like living that example. I thought it was great. I thought that moment definitely was one of the best moments in the series. Him walking away from the ring and still feeling like a champion, appearing like a champion.
Yeah, and of course the closing shot of the film, Rocky at Adrian's grave again, his son, and he says, "Yo, Adrian, we did it. We did it.
We did it. We got punched lots of times in the head and didn't die of a brain hemorrhage."
Standing by Rocky's old skill of just getting hit a lot, despite the fact that he had dangerous brain trauma in the fifth movie, but we just sort of ignore that.
The council didn't ignore it. The tribunal that he went before was like the city board or whatever it was, and he says something like, "You guys here sitting at this table here."
I've got the speech here where he's talking about like the Bill of Rights, and he goes, "Because if you're willing to go through all the battling you got to go through to get where you want to get it, who's got the right to stop you? I mean, maybe some of you guys got something you never finished, something you really want to do, something you never said to someone, something, and you're told no even after you pay your dues. Who's got the right to tell you that? Who? Nobody." And the speech goes, again, it's a good speech by Rocky. The fact that it works is, again, suspension of disbelief. Come on.
They all just look at each
like,
other like, "You're right."
You got it, brain damaged old man fighter guy.
What would have been funny is if he says that and then he's like, "Thank you, I really appreciate it." And another thing, and then he just goes right into that same speech he just gave. I'm sure a lot of you didn't do. Just like repeats it on a loop. He's like, "No, we said you could fight. Are you sure you're okay?" Like,
where am I?
Thing.
Where am I?
What
year is it?
Yeah.
Either that or I would have loved. And another thing, segregation worked, and everyone's like, "Whoa, Rocky, whoa!"
They all just start looking at each other.
Too far, Rocky.
Uh-oh.
He's from a different time. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great ending to the saga of Rocky. Before we move on to Creed, I think it was a much better ending than 5, and an ending the franchise deserved.
Yeah, and Rocky also he fades out as he leaves when he leaves Adrian's grave, confirming the fact that Rocky was a ghost the whole time. The real Rocky was in our hearts.
Rocky was killed in the first fight with Apollo Creed, and he's been dead ever since. That would make
Yeah.
sense.
I'm
Matt,
sure there's a fan theory out there. The credits, Sean.
Oh, that sucked. That was dumb.
Did you not like that montage in the
I
credits?
did
I thought that was
not.
so cool.
I thought that
you
was
really didn't like the credits?
No, I didn't. So
first of all, I liked the remastered "Gonna Fly Now." I thought that was cool.
That was good. No,
you didn't like that?
Bill Conti came back and did the music. I thought the music was really great. There wasn't a lot of it, I will say. It was a very sort of score light film, which I liked. It played to the dramatic moments, but no, Bill Conti did a great job.
Minimalistic with the soundtrack. But you didn't like the montage of everybody in Philly running up onto the with the statue and pumping their fists?
So I would say my personal opinion is that the only shots that should be shown during the credits are bloopers. If you're showing bloopers during the credits, that's great. Otherwise, just play the credits. Like, it was just really weird and unnecessary.
Did you feel like they were trapping you into watching the credits?
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like that.
Well,
I do feel like that sometimes.
I always watch the credits. I was hoping there would be like an after credits scene with Rocky where he goes and meets up with Rambo to like form a Sylvester Stallone like supergroup.
And then Nick Fury shows up and asks them both to join the Avengers.
The Sylvester Stallone Avengers.
We have this initiative we're talking about. It would have been time for it, right? It would have been a little early. Actually, it would have been very early. Dang.
Yeah, they could have started that whole first trend Avengers in Hollywood. Would have been.
Yeah, that would have been. No, wait, that would have been the time for it because that was when you had like Iron Man. Am I thinking of? Do I have my aughts mixed up with?
Here we go, Matt. What year was Iron Man released in?
Aughts and teens. I know this is your favorite game. Iron Man 2009.
2008. Sure. You were close.
Damn. Okay.
That's still pretty good.
So. That was like the first one, right?
Oh yeah. No, Incredible Hulk might have been the Edward Norton Incredible Hulk. That was also 2008, so they were both released that year.
Okay.
I think Hulk.
So it would have been 2 years off.
Yeah.
Unless Rocky was the first Avenger. Took Captain America.
We got Iron Man. We got Captain America. We got Thor, and we got Rocky Balboa. He's just there like his I'm ready to go, guys.
Box Thanos. Thanos, you don't even know what hit you.
Come on over to the restaurant. We'll have dinner. Matt, this movie went on to be a unexpected box office success. It beat its expectations. It finished third its opening weekend, but it grossed $12 million and eventually went on to be Stallone's most successful starring role since 1993's Cliffhanger. And the sixth highest grossing boxing movie of all time behind all of the Rockies and $1 Million Baby. The total box office receipts, $70 million on a budget of about $25 million. So a successful movie. Certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Matt, this is the part of the movie where I ask you to see how many of the top 10 highest grossing films of 2006 you can name.
I knew you were going to allude to that.
I'll give you a minute to think about it, but while you're doing that, I am going to Google exactly where Rocky Balboa ranked that particular year, but I got to go to another website to do that. Let's see.
I will warn you, I think I request, nay, I demand some hints early on, because I've realized that years are not my thing. Remembering what happened in certain years, not very big on that.
Rocky Balboa was the 65th highest grossing movie of 2006.
Okay.
It beat such great movies as Lady in the Water and Last Holiday, but it was beaten by films like Final Destination 3 and the King Kong. I believe the Peter Jackson one would have been that year. Matt, here are some clues for you. One, two, three, four, five, six of them were sequels, or later movies in a franchise. One of these movies we have talked about on this show.
2006 I don't think there was a Bond movie that year. That wasn't Casino Royale, was it?
It was Casino Royale, 2006, fourth highest grossing movie.
I always think that was released in 2007 because it 100% should have been for the 007. I still to this day can't figure out why.
And it was November 06, so it was late 06.
They still should have saved it for 07.
07.
I can't fathom that. It's one of those irrational things that makes me mad. Because it would have been the perfect marketing. How do you not release the reboot of the 007 franchise a year before 2007?
The only 007 year, yeah.
And then if everything had just been, if it had been pushed up a year, then maybe they wouldn't have had to have delayed No Time to Die. Maybe we would get that on schedule. I don't know.
Tragic. Let's see.
Casino Royale.
Casino Royale. I'll give you some other clues. 1, 2 superhero movies are in here. But of course, this is pre-Marvel, so keep that in mind.
Was this one of the Superman movies? Superman Returns?
Superman Returns, number 9.
Returns, yeah.
Bryan Singer, Brandon Routh film.
Not bad. Was that the Kevin Spacey one? It was, right?
Yes, where he plays Lex Luthor. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3 kids animated movies on here. 2 are the first of their series. 1 is a sequel. One of them is a Pixar film.
Toy Story 2.
No, it was the first in its series. Toy Story 2 was way before 06.
Oh, Monsters Inc.?
No, that would have been way before. You got to really fast forward. It spawned several sequels. Cars. It was the first Cars, okay. Number 6. Let's see. Superhero. I'll give you another. The other superhero franchise, arguably one of the worst of the franchise, killed the franchise for a number of years before.
X-Men.
X-Men 3.
X-Men movies?
X-Men 3, The Last Stand. Very good. There is a live action kids movie on here. Also spawned a sequel. Big success out of nowhere.
Live action
kids comedy
movie.
Fantasy
this
comedy.
This is too late for Spy Kids. What?
It is too late for Spy Kids. You're right. This one's a little more grounded. It stars Ben Stiller.
Oh, not Dodgeball.
No.
Ben Stiller.
More family friendly.
Yeah.
Night at the Museum was what we were looking for.
Oh, I was not going to get that.
No.
That was.
This is taking forever, so I'm going to fast. There is a Mission Impossible movie. You know which one it is? Mission
Impossible 5.
3. You're very bad at this. That's okay. Number 10 was Happy Feet, which surprisingly made a lot of money. Then Superman Returns, Mission Impossible 3, X-Men The Last Stand, Cars, Night at the Museum, Casino Royale,
Happy Feet,
Ice Age The Meltdown.
Wow.
The second in the franchise was the third that year. It's amazing how much money those movies made. I mean, just
what year was Madagascar?
That's a really good question. I will find out here because that was also Blue Skies. Let's go to their filmography.
Yeah, people. You would think people in the mid '90s, mid 2000s. You would think people in the mid 2000s would have been starved for like computer generated anime, like kids movies about animals, but there were a lot of them. You would think they were starved for it because so many people went to go see the Ice Age movies inexplicably. Like they were that's the only game in town.
Yeah,
but
I think right around
people just really love Ray Romano that much.
That was when it really started to spin up. Like it took a while for everyone to catch up to Pixar, and like by 05, 06, stuff just friggin' exploded. In terms of CGI animation, yes, Madagascar was 05.
Okay.
It was 05, so right before this. So this was right, DreamWorks, Blue Sky, all right in that time. Number 2, a Tom Hanks movie.
Just a quick side note. Madagascar, as far as I know, is the only thing David Schwimmer has done since Friends. Can't
Are
think
you
of a
gonna
single other thing.
take that bet? Because I'll Google it.
I don't think it's real. I just, in my mind, that's the only thing he's done since Friends, because he basically disappeared off the face of the earth since then. I'm sure he was in other stuff, but it's the only thing that I can immediately think of.
Actually, you're you're. Oh no, he did do 7 episodes on Will and Grace in 2018, 2019.
Oh, the new Will and Grace. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and he did the People versus O.J. Simpson, which he was very good in as Robert
Oh
Kardashian.
yeah, that's right. He played the Kardashian lawyer. Yeah,
Yeah. He was
and
good.
yeah,
in
people
that.
did say that. They said he's very good in this. Yeah,
Yeah, he got
that's
nominated
right.
for
Yeah.
awards for that.
Yes. All right.
Um,
Okay.
so,
So Madagascar is not the only thing
but
David
honestly,
Schwimmer's been in.
his filmography is terrible.
Yeah.
I'm going to be
Very
honest.
spotty.
It's bad.
It's pretty much that he needed money because I guess the Friends revenue dried up at
Or he's just
some
bored.
point.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Number 2 is the Da Vinci Code.
No, that was not the Tom Hanks I was going to guess. I was going to guess the Terminal, Sean. I thought this was the year for the Terminal.
I think people just forget
What year was
he was
that?
in that. Terminal was 04. So a little bit earlier.
This is really bad, Sean. I have not seen the Terminal. That's not the really bad part. The really bad part is what I'm going to say next. I always thought that the Terminal was about a man with terminal illness.
The Terminal.
Who happened to also live in an airport.
Okay, I was going to
Which
say.
would have been come on, would that not have been a much better movie?
It wouldn't have been. But I just give you credit because I was so afraid you were not going to include the airport part and be like, I thought it was about a dude with cancer. And I'm like, but like all the posters had airplanes on them. And like the trailer, he was in an airport.
Yeah.
You just thought, no, I thought it was just like one scene in the movie. And I thought he was like in a hospital and other.
Yeah. Just had a suit on and was ready to go.
And then finally,
every scene is him in the airport. But
Matt, the number 1 movie of 2006, the 3rd film in cinema history to gross over $1 billion. It is the 35th highest grossing film of all time, the 2nd in this franchise, one of the biggest franchises of the early 2000s.
we are talking, of course,
There are 5
about
films in this franchise,
2006.
all of which were massively successful.
We are talking about The Return of the King.
No!
Lord of the Rings?
No, I think you're too late for that. I think that was earlier.
Too late for that one?
Return of the King was 2003. You're definitely too late.
3 years off.
No,
there.
the first film in this franchise came out in 2003, the sequel in 2006, and then they kind of blasted them out after that. It's a Disney franchise, but live action. Sort of an action comedy fantasy. I mean, one of the biggest franchises of the time.
Wow. I am
It's the 14th highest grossing film series of all time, in fact.
Wow. Makes me want to watch this movie. I can't think of what.
I mean, I can give you clues that'll give it away.
No. Just
right,
give me
clues that would
simpler clues. More vague. Vague it up.
Well, that's kind of tough.
Give me a line from the movie.
No, because this movie,
one of the characters
it's a genre. I mean, it's a very certain type of genre film. It was for families. High adventure, I would describe it as.
And this was the first in the franchise?
This was the second. This was the second in the franchise.
You said the second. Okay,
yes, the first was 2003. The second, this one outgrossed the original. The original was a huge, out of nowhere success. Like I said,
and which year did this first one come out?
First one was 2003, then 2006. It is highly correlated with Disney. Directed by Gore Verbinski, who did most of these.
I have to say that the live action is what's throwing me. Because I can think of...
You're going to feel so dumb when you hear this.
This is a very quiet era for Disney, I thought. The aughts.
For animation, it was.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is like for animation, it was.
But again, this was a shocking success. The first one, nobody thought it was going to be as good as it was, and it spawned 5 movies. They actually took a break.
Sean, The Pirates of the Caribbean we're talking about.
Yes, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's
Yes.
Chest. I told you you'd be mad when I told you
I
what it
always
was.
forget it's a Disney property. Yes.
It made $4 billion, that franchise, just at the box office.
Did. Massively successful.
Hugely
and
successful.
All the movies after the second one were terrible.
Yep.
Terrible.
Yep.
Like Abomination.
And even the second was fine.
Yes, and the second, I was going to say the second was passable.
The first one was good, though. I did like the first one. I'll give it that.
The first one was very good.
That
yes.
was fun.
I liked. You know what? I like the fourth one a little bit. I feel like it's more of a guilty pleasure.
They have moments. I mean, I think the third one even has moments, but they're just kind of repetitive. But I also feel
Pirates of the Caribbean is always the one I point to as an example of a movie I like, but can understand why it's universally hated.
Well, I sort of feel that way about the first Transformers movie, which I think it's a lot of crap, but I actually think I mean, the sequels are garbage, but the first Transformers movie I actually liked and think is, like, solid for the genre it's in. I don't think it gets its due.
Sean, I've never seen a Transformers movie.
Oh,
I think I've mentioned this on the cast before, but
I'm going to say this right now for the record. Our next live commentary should definitely be the first Transformers movie. That would be fantastic because it is bonkers.
Some bonus
and
content
stupid.
out there?
And it's Michael Bay
Patreons only?
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
So anyway, that was our film trivia. I hope someone found it interesting. Matt, you've really got to study up on your box office knowledge.
I think next time I should be the one in the hosting seat.
Oh, you want to quiz me for Creed? What year did Creed come out? Because that's our next movie is Creed. Creed came out in 2015.
Oh, 2015. Wow.
It was more recent
That's
than that.
much later than I thought. Yeah,
I
I thought it was...
But the thing is, it's only going to get easier because 2015 is solid Marvel territory. So whatever the Marvel movie was that year is going to be the first Avengers maybe would have been. No, I think that would have been a little before it.
First Avengers was like 2009. No,
I think it was like 12.
12. Yeah, 12 sounds like a safe. That sounds safe.
The Avengers was 12. Yes.
12.
And so this would have been. But this would have been, this actually probably would have been Age of Ultron. I think right around there is probably my guess. And that was a huge. So anyway.
That's a good guess.
But a good tease, we will be talking about Creed next week. We're barreling towards the end of our Rocky watch through here. Hopefully it's been as much of a hoot for you as it has been for us. We hope you come back and join us then. Of course, our website's upfordebate.tv. You can check it out there. Listen to all the past Rocky episodes if you're just getting caught up. I think they've all been interesting in their own right and definitely worth listening to. Of course, you can subscribe wherever you get podcasts, and you can talk to us at UpForDebateTV on Twitter or email us upfordebatetv@gmail.com. That's going to do it for this week. We're going to be back next time with more Rocky adventures, but until then, he's Matt, I'm Sean. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.